This happened back in the late 90s, 1998 or 99. Our house sat outside town by like 30 minutes. My dad worked on farm equipment and sometimes welded stuff for people out of one of the sheds on our property. We had a pretty big yard compared to most people. Spread out. There was the house, then a detached garage, two long sheds, one smaller storage building, and a tree line in the back that separated our property from this overgrown creek area. I spent a lot of time outside because my dad always had me helping with something. Moving tires, cleaning tools, burning brush piles, stuff I complained about then, but miss now. My mom worked at a nursing home for a while, so sometimes it'd just be me and my dad eating frozen pizzas watching cable until late. Wednesdays were the one day I had to stay after school for this shop class thing. Me and another kid were helping organize equipment because the teacher let us use the auto lift sometimes after class. It was getting dark when I finally started walking home from town. I didn't have a car yet, and our house wasn't really walkable in the normal sense, but I cut through a few side roads and then down this long county road that connected near our property. Back then, nobody thought much of it. Sometimes my dad picked me up, sometimes not. I had my hands tucked into my hoodie sleeves. There weren't many cars out. The guy pulled up beside me kind of sudden. I didn't hear gravel crunching much before he was already there next to me, rolling his window down. It was a dark-colored car. Not brand new even for then. One of those rounded cars everybody's grandparents seemed to own. I remember the headlights looked yellowish instead of bright white. The man asked if I needed a ride. Simple as that. I didn't think much about it because adults did that sometimes back then, especially if they recognized you from town or knew your parents. But the second I looked at him, I got this weird feeling I still can't explain. He wasn't old, maybe 40s. Had short hair, kind of thinning on top, clean-shaven, regular-looking guy. There wasn't anything obviously wrong about him, but he was staring too hard. That's the best way I can put it. Not friendly. Just locked onto me. I said, "Nah, I'm good," and kept walking. He asked again, said it was getting cold and he was heading that direction. It sounded strange to me even then, like he didn't actually know where I was going. Most locals would have said toward Miller Road or toward town or something specific. I told him my house was close and I was fine. He stayed driving beside me for another 5 seconds. Then he nodded once and drove off. I watched the taillights disappear for a while longer than I probably needed to, mostly because something about the interaction made my stomach feel weird. I smelled his cologne after the car was already gone. It was strong, almost choking, sweet-smelling but heavy, the kind older guys used to wear too much of. It lingered in the air even after the car disappeared down the road. I was doing stuff, helping my dad clean out one of the sheds because winter was coming and he liked getting everything organized before snow started. My younger sister had volleyball practice almost every evening, so my mom was busy driving her around. Nothing weird happened right away. I think it was 4 days later. That was different because there was no car this time. I'd gotten home from school before everyone else. Dad was still working and my mom was asleep before her shift. I was outside carrying a box of old paint cans toward the smaller shed near the tree line. It was windy that day. I remember hearing our dog barking somewhere behind the garage. Alert barking. Halfway near the shed, I smelled it. The same cologne. I thought my dad had spilled something in the shed because it was that noticeable. When I opened the door, there wasn't anybody there. The smell got stronger near the back corner outside. I walked around behind the shed and there was nobody there, just weeds in the tree line. Our property had a weird layout. The sheds blocked visibility in spots so somebody could technically move around without being seen from the house if they stayed close to the trees. I never really thought about that before all this happened. My dad said I found a dead deer or something. I said no, it smelled like cologne, and my mom, apparently she'd smelled something weird near the garage the night before. Nobody was panicking. Another 3 or 4 days later, my dad found this bag. That's the point where everything changed. He found it behind the longer shed near the back of the property. There was this narrow space between the wall and the trees where nobody really went unless they were weed trimming or looking for tools. I guess he noticed disturbed leaves back there while moving scrap metal. The bag itself was one of those dark green duffel bags. Dirty, wet on the bottom, mud stains. Dad originally thought somebody dumped stolen stuff there because people knew cops didn't patrol much around those roads. Inside, though, was weird. There was an old handheld video camera, not huge like the VHS ones from the 80s, but still bulky. A couple blank tapes, zip ties, work gloves, batteries, a flashlight wrapped in cloth tape around the handle. I think there was also rope, but I'm not completely sure anymore because over the years I might have mixed details up in my memory. But I know for a fact about the zip ties because my mom got visibly upset when she saw those. Nobody recognized any of it. My dad, the thing that bothered him was how hidden it was. You wouldn't accidentally leave something there. You had to intentionally tuck it behind the shed where nobody could see it from the yard. I remember standing there staring at the camera specifically because for some reason that creeped me out more than anything else in the bag. Like, why would somebody need that out there? My mom wanted Dad to call the sheriff, but he waited until morning because people were different back then about stuff like that. There was still this mindset that there was a simple explanation and you didn't want to waste police time. That night, I remember around 1 or 2 in the morning, hearing our dog bark again outside. What really got me, though, what I still think about, was what my sister said the next morning before school. She mentioned she thought she saw somebody outside her bedroom window the night before near the trees. My dad called the sheriff that morning after my sister said that. He used the wall phone in the kitchen and kept his voice low, like he didn't want us hearing the conversation, even though we obviously could. This was before people had cameras everywhere or doorbells recording everything. So when something weird happened, it mostly came down to somebody saying, "I think I saw someone," and police driving around for 10 minutes with spotlights. That was kind of the reality of living out there. They looked through the bag out on our picnic table, while my mom stood there with her arms folded the whole time, looking nervous. Deputy picked up the camera and asked if it still worked. My dad said he didn't know because nobody touched it much after finding it. The tapes weren't labeled. The deputies took everything with them eventually. Our property always had footprints everywhere because of us, neighbors, delivery drivers, random people helping my dad with jobs. It wasn't like they found some perfect boot print leading into the woods. I described the car and the cologne. Looking back now, I think part of what made everything scarier was how incomplete it all felt. Nobody had answers. Nobody even had enough information for a real explanation. Just little disconnected things that maybe meant something together. My mom made me walk my sister to the bus stop even though it was literally at the end of our driveway. Life still had to continue because people still had work and school and bills. That's the part movies never really get right. Even when something bad or scary is happening, normal life keeps interrupting it. But there was this tension sitting underneath everything after that, especially at night. Our dog started acting strange too. My dad said all of us acting nervous was rubbing off on him. About another week later was the first time somebody actually saw someone clearly on the property, or mostly clearly. I heard my dad yelling. I jumped out of bed and ran to the living room, and my dad was already outside, heading toward the detached garage. My mom was shouting at him from the porch not to go alone. Rain everywhere, mud, wind blowing trees around. Dad chased after whoever it was, but my mom screamed at him to stop. I think reality finally hit him then, because he turned around, breathing hard, looking more shaken than I'd ever seen him. Years passed after that. I graduated. My parents stayed in that house until the mid-2000s before downsizing closer to town. I grew up in a small town. There were all these little local legends people repeated when you were kids. Stuff about old mines collapsing, people disappearing on hunting trails. By the time I was in my 20s, I didn't really believe any of it anymore, but me and a few friends still got obsessed with finding those places anyway. This happened a week before Halloween. Me, my friend, let's just call them Dude 1, his cousin Dude 2, And this girl, M, had been driving around filming little abandoned places for YouTube and TikTok. Not getting even 10 likes, but it was fun. Dude 1 was the one who always pushed for creepier places. The house everybody talked about was at the end of this dead road. I don't want to give away the location. It sat way back off this road that went through woods, isolated enough where you wouldn't accidentally end up there. You had to know about it already. People called it the Willie House. I don't even know if that was actually their last name or if locals just started calling it that over time. Supposedly a family disappeared there sometime in the 90s. Husband, wife, 2 girls. Depending on who you asked, they either vanished overnight or packed up and left suddenly, or got involved in drugs or cult stuff or witness protection. Every version was different. The only thing that stayed the same was that neighbors said all their stuff was still inside afterward. I never really cared about the missing family part. What made it interesting was people swore the house stayed untouched for decades. No vandalism, barely any theft, nothing. Which is weird because around where I grew up, abandoned places get destroyed immediately. Copper stripped out, windows smashed, people spray painting walls. But supposedly this place stayed mostly intact because everybody got creeped out there. Dude 1 found some post online talking about the place again and started bothering us to go. It had rained for like 3 straight weekends and none of us had anything going on Friday night. Dude 1 drove. We were joking the whole drive there. Dude 2 kept making fake ghost noises every few minutes trying to scare M. It just felt like another pointless Friday night. The road to the house got rough after a while. Pavement turned into cracked gravel and there weren't really any street lights. Woods and stretches of dead fields. Some of the trees still had leaves, but most were bare already, so the headlights reached farther into the woods than normal. We drove another quarter mile before the house finally showed up. It looked smaller than I expected at first. 2 stories, dark roof covered in leaves. There was a detached garage. No lights, obviously. The weird thing was, it didn't look ruined. That's what got me. Even in the dark, you could tell it wasn't decayed the way abandoned places usually are. The windows weren't smashed. The porch railings still stood upright. There were leaves piled everywhere, but the house itself looked almost preserved, like time stopped around it. Dude 1 parked near the edge of the driveway facing outward because he always did that at abandoned places. Easier to leave fast if somebody came, apparently. Everybody suddenly got quieter. I think we all expected it to look more destroyed. The front door was unlocked. That freaked me out, because it's weird. You expect abandoned places to be chained shut or swollen from weather, but Dude 1 pushed lightly and it just opened inward like 6 inches with this creaking sound. It was like opening a box that sat in an attic 20 years. Dude 1 shined his flashlight inside and just went, "Holy shit." The living room looked frozen in time. Floral couch, big tube TV. There were framed family photos on shelves still, even little decorations. I saw a ceramic pumpkin thing sitting near the TV. Nothing looked tossed around. There was dust on everything, thick enough you could see where mice crossed tables, but otherwise it looked like people should have still been living there. We spread out slowly after that, moving room to room. The kitchen still had dishes inside cabinets. There was this old calendar hanging near the fridge from 1997. M kept saying she hated how normal it felt in there. I knew exactly what she meant. Usually abandoned houses feel hollow right away. This one still felt occupied, like somebody just stepped outside. I found myself looking down hallways expecting something. The power obviously didn't work, but Dude 1 kept trying light switches anyway for some reason. Every click sounded insanely loud in there. We eventually went upstairs because Dude 2 found the staircase near the dining room. The second floor felt worse. Hard to explain why, because it was narrower up there. Low ceilings, small bedrooms. It felt more personal. One room still had children's wallpaper peeling off the walls. Little clouds and stars. There were toys scattered under a bed. Not horror movie creepy arranged. It was just regular stuff left behind. That made it worse. Dude 1 kept filming, while Dude 2 opened drawers and looked through closets. I remember getting annoyed because he started treating it like a joke again, making comments about haunted dolls and stuff. It felt disrespectful suddenly. like real people actually lived there once. I wandered into another bedroom by myself for a minute. It looked like the parents' room. There was a dresser with clothes still folded inside. I found old receipts and batteries and random normal junk in drawers. Nothing creepy. That's the thing. It was all too normal. And this is where things start. I heard the TV. It sounded so out of place, like muffled talking, static underneath it. I stepped into the hallway again and listened harder, downstairs, enough to hear through the floorboards. Sounded exactly like an old television left on in another room, a sitcom or commercial or something. I couldn't make out words. I remember saying, "You guys hear that?" Dude 1 looked up from his phone. "Hear what?" "The TV." Dude 2 laughed and went, "Dude, stop." No, seriously. I could still hear it, faint voices mixed with static. Then what sounded like children laughing. It sounded close, like directly below us. Em stared at me weird and said, "I don't hear anything." I was getting frustrated because it was so obvious to me. The sound definitely got louder near the hallway. "You seriously can't hear that?" Nothing. Dude 2 started smiling like he thought I was messing with them now. I heard footsteps downstairs, walking across wood floors. That was the exact moment I stopped wanting to be there. I said, "No, somebody's down there." Dude 1 asked if another group came in. The footsteps sounded deliberate, heavy enough to be an adult. I started going downstairs before anybody answered me, partly because I thought some homeless person was there, and partly because I suddenly couldn't stand not knowing. The staircase creaked insanely loud. Halfway down, I realized the TV sound had stopped completely. The whole first floor was dead quiet again. Dude 1 came down behind me asking what I heard exactly while shining his flashlight around. The beams moved across the living room furniture and walls, dust floating everywhere. Nobody there. I checked the kitchen. Raccoons do not sound like somebody walking around in boots. I heard it again directly behind me, but nothing there except the dark living room. I remember my chest hurting from how hard my heart started beating. I said we needed to leave, straight up. Something felt wrong in that house, like walking into somebody else's memory or something. I can't explain it better than that. Dude 2 still wanted to keep exploring because he thought I was freaking myself out. Em looked uncomfortable now. She asked if somebody really was outside watching us. We spent another 10 minutes inside after that, and I hated every second. Dude 1 wanted more footage since we drove all the way out there. I mostly stayed near the front door while they checked the garage entrance and downstairs rooms again. I kept hearing little things the whole time, random noises that sounded almost real enough to identify before disappearing. I thought I heard a woman cough softly somewhere upstairs, and I could have sworn I heard a cabinet close. Nobody else reacted to any of it. Eventually, Dude 1 finally agreed we should go because everybody's mood was shot by then anyway. We headed out the front door together, talking over each other about whether squatters might use the place sometimes. I stepped off the porch first, and, in the front window beside the living room, a woman standing still behind the glass staring directly at me. I swear to God I thought it was an actual person inside the house. I mean a real woman. Pale face, she was standing behind the glass inside the living room where we had just been. I stopped walking. I pointed right at the window and said, "There's somebody in there." The woman didn't move. She stood there staring at me. Em turned fast and looked too, but said she didn't see anything. Dude 2 kept asking where. I remember getting angry because it was right there. "By the lamp," I said. "Inside the window." And she was gone. Like I blinked and there was nothing there. Somebody ducked down? I still argue with myself about it years later, because if it was a real person, where did they go? We had just walked out the front door. There wasn't enough time for somebody to run upstairs or out the back without us hearing it. The woman looked real. She didn't look ghostly. It was like somebody's mom standing inside their house at night. Nobody wanted to stay and figure it out. We left. I was around 23. I always say 23, but if I actually think about the apartment I was living in at the time and where I worked, then it might have been the year after. Either way, it was a long time ago now, over 10 years. I live somewhere completely different now, and I don't even like talking about this. I lived in this town in Ohio. I rented half of a duplex with my boyfriend at the time, except he traveled for work, so I was alone more than I was with him. The place itself wasn't bad. You could pretty much hear everything in the house no matter where you were standing. My shift started early, so I usually went to bed before midnight. My boyfriend had left for work that week somewhere in Indiana. He did some industrial stuff and would disappear for days. It wasn't like in movies where somebody notices strange cars driving around or gets weird phone calls first. I hate when people tell stories like that because real life usually isn't like that. Most horrible things happen right in the middle of boring normal life. I'd gotten home from work, showered. I started getting tired and cleaned the kitchen up. Then I went into my bedroom and laid there, on my phone for probably another hour. I remember hearing a knock at the door sometime after midnight because it startled me bad enough that I dropped my phone on my face. I looked at the clock and realized how late it was. I got up and walked into the living room without turning many lights on. I only had the lamp near the couch on. I thought somebody drunk had the wrong house. There was a little window beside the front door, but it had blinds over it. I didn't open the door. I just kind of stood near it and said, "Hello?" A man answered, like he'd been standing right against the door waiting. He said, "Is Jody here?" I said, "No, wrong house." I remember hearing him breathing through the door. He asked again, "Jody ain't there?" I said no again and started backing away already because something about it felt wrong suddenly, because he didn't sound confused. If you knock on the wrong house at midnight, apologize and leave. Instead, he knocked again, harder. I moved closer to the window and peeled the blinds back half an inch. That's when I saw the mask. Hoodie pulled up too. He said, "Open the door." I didn't answer. Then he hit the door hard. Over and over. Loud enough that I remember thinking somebody nearby had to hear it. I backed away. He started yelling. I remember him saying my name too. I never told him my name. I still don't understand that. Maybe somebody told him where I lived thinking another person lived there. I don't know. I grabbed my phone off the couch and tried calling 911 right away, but my hands were shaking. I accidentally hit my mom first. I hung up and dialed again. I heard him stop banging. The dispatcher answered, and I remember saying, "He has a mask," like 5 times. Then I heard running toward the side of the house. I knew immediately he was going to the back door. The backyard fence was messed up and people could get through easier there. I just knew. I ran toward the kitchen while still on the phone, and right when I got near the hallway, I heard the first kick hit the back door. It sounded unbelievably loud inside that tiny house, like a gunshot. The whole door jumped inward. The dispatcher was asking me if I could lock myself somewhere, but there honestly wasn't anywhere safe. The bedroom doors were hollow garbage. Another kick hit. This time I heard wood crack. I remember screaming. I ran into the bedroom and grabbed the only thing near me, which was this heavy ceramic thing on the dresser. Realistically, that would not have helped me against a grown man. My brain was just gone at that point. The third hit came and I heard the back door burst open. And now I could hear him inside, in the kitchen. I opened my bedroom window because for some reason my brain finally realized staying inside was a bad idea. The screen got stuck halfway and I almost started crying right there because I thought I wouldn't get it open in time. I heard him walking down the hallway, and then I saw his shadow stop outside the bedroom door. I remember one side of the shadow looked uneven, because he was standing slightly sideways or something. The doorknob moved. I had locked it earlier, but those bedroom locks were the kind you could probably open with a butter knife. I remember staring at the knob turning and feeling this horrible realization that if he really wanted through that door, he'd get through it immediately. I dropped the thing and climbed halfway out the window without even putting shoes on. The bedroom window faced the side yard. There was barely any room between our duplex and the neighboring house. Just this narrow strip of grass with garbage cans and weeds growing near the fence. I got stuck for a second, climbing out because the window frame caught my pajama pants, and I was actually thinking, this is how I die, stuck in a window. Right when I pulled free, the bedroom door slammed open behind me. Friends and people I know ask if I saw his face or what he looked like. Only thing I remember, I saw movement behind me and heard him coming into the room fast, and I just jumped the rest of the way out. I landed hard on my knees and hands in the grass. My phone flew out of my hand. I heard him at the window. I got up and ran. I wasn't athletic. I smoked cigarettes back then and barely exercised, but I swear adrenaline does something crazy to your body because I don't even remember feeling tired. I ran barefoot through that side yard and around the front of the duplex screaming for help. None of the porch lights came on at first. I was screaming loud enough, but nobody reacted immediately. I remember thinking how empty the neighborhood suddenly felt, like everybody had disappeared. The man had come out the front door now. He wasn't chasing me full speed, but he was walking after me quickly, one arm swinging weird like he'd heard it kicking the door in. I ran across the street toward this couple's house because I knew they were usually awake late. I don't even really remember knowing them personally. Just one of those neighbor situations where you wave sometimes. I started pounding on their door and porch light finally came on. The guy was gone. I mean, literally, I looked back and he wasn't in the street anymore. He had either run off somewhere between houses or ducked behind a car or something in the 10 seconds I was banging on the door. The man opened the door and looked terrified himself because all he saw was me standing there barefoot losing my mind. Police cars showed up. Adrenaline was wearing off and I became really aware I was standing in some stranger's living room in pajamas shaking uncontrollably. I remember cops asking if it was an ex-boyfriend. I was like, dude, my back door had literally been kicked in. Nothing obvious was missing, even cash in the kitchen. They asked me again about the name Jody. I told him exactly what the guy said at the door. He asked if any previous tenant had that name or if I knew anyone by it. I didn't. Still don't. The weirdest thing though, and I swear this is true, one of the drawers in the kitchen had been pulled all the way out onto the floor, and the man, just gone.